Hello fantastic creatures, I'm fantasims and welcome to my channel. In today's video I'll show you a speed build of how I created this elaborate onsen bathhouse and epic Japanese dragon as part of a Sims Tale collaboration with a group of incredible simmers. The wonderful and beautiful KamilaYtb invited me to join in a group collaboration where we all create a build based on a wintry tale of our choosing. I'll put links in the description below to all the simmers involved and their amazing build videos. But before we get into the mythical tale that inspired my build, I'll quickly explain what you see me doing here. So I already had Japanese style custom roofing I created from a previous video, I'll link that below too. I just took a section of that roof I made and changed the colour and added some debug gazebos from Snowy Escape Pack to create the top roof decoration. Sometimes I like to start with the roofing and work my way down so I know how big to make the shell of the build. Now this build took me forever. I thought that since I already had the roof decoration mostly made that the rest of the build would come together much faster than usual. Boy was I wrong. Not only was I super indecisive on what I was doing, but I experienced so many glitches that this build probably took me over 50 hours and I ended up with 20 hours of footage. So I've had to speed it up super fast and cut out a lot of the footage to only keep the highlights. I deleted the hours of footage of me battling against my build nemesis with its disappearing floors, weird shadows, glitchy awnings, spandrels, glitching platforms, roofing and jumping camera angles, but I bested the beast and was thankfully able to actually finish a build for once. So if this speed build is too fast for you, you can always adjust the playback speed by clicking the cog icon on the bottom of this video, and my voice will sound like a serial killer. Or you can speed it up and listen to me as a chipmunk. Either way, I'll sound amazing. Just kidding. You can also download this build from my gallery, I'll put a link below, and you can pull it apart if you want a better sense of how it was constructed. I was happy with how the roofing turned out, but there's a glitch with the new platforms at the moment where platforms cause roofing to show inside the room, so I later had to delete all the roofing I had done and make sure none of it poked through the room. I had to come up with some creative solutions, which I'll show you later on. The theme of this collaboration was to base our build on a winter tale and share this story in our speed build videos. So since we just got the Snowy Escape Pack in The Sims 4, I thought it would be fun to base my winter tale on the Yuki-onna, also known as Tsurara-onna. I don't know if I said that right. Now there are several versions of this ancient Japanese myth, but the main premise is that there was a lonely single man looking longingly at some icicles hanging off the edge of his roof. And he exclaimed with a great sigh, "I wish I had a wife as beautiful as these icicles." And as soon as he wished this, a beautiful woman appeared before him as an incarnation of an icicle. The way the story ends is different for various regions throughout Japan, but they all end in such tragedy, so I decided to add my own ending to the story. One version of the tale ends with the icicle woman marrying the lonely man. The husband forced her to take a bath because she had not taken one and probably really needed one, but she was afraid of the hot water, so the husband draws his wife a steamy bath, and when she had not come out of the bath for a long time, he went in to check on her only to find fragments of ice floating on the surface of the water. Another version of the tale describes the icicle woman marrying the lonely man in the winter, but as soon as spring came she disappeared. The husband was heartbroken thinking she had run away from him, and later in the year he married someone else. But when winter came again, the icicle wife came back to greet her husband only to find him with another woman. She was so angry she changed her appearance into an icicle and stabbed him to death. So, as you can see, the ending of this tale is so sad and sometimes incredibly violent. So I decided to give it my own ending, and here's what I came up with. So the icicle woman did indeed disappear once the warm weather returned, but she came back to life as an ice spirit. And every winter she roams the icy wilderness rescuing people and animals that are dying from the cold. During the winter she would bring them back to an abandoned hut, but it was dangerous for herself because she knew she needed to keep the hut warm to heal those stranded in the snow, but the heat weakens her as she must remain ice cold. If she melts before the warm weather comes, she cannot return until next winter and would be unable to take care of those in need. Although she had a great sense of purpose in healing the injured, she felt lonely and helpless because she could not properly take care of the sick for fear of melting, and could only be around humans and animals for a short time before she had to retreat into the ice to cool herself down. One day, as she was scouring the frosty wilderness in search of those in need, she came across a snow dragon hidden high in the mountains. The snow dragon was also lonely, as he had to dwell where no human or animal could survive the cold. The ice spirit told him about her adventure saving those stranded in the snow, and that she always feared melting until next winter. The snow dragon was so overwhelmed with joy that he had found a companion in need of the same frigid dwelling as he, that he invited the ice spirit to build a palace of healing above his cave on the mountaintop. Now the snow dragon and ice spirit would never be alone, and the ice spirit no longer needs to fear melting, because if she gets too warm, the frosty breath of the snow dragon keeps her frozen and strong. Plus, it is always frigid on the mountaintop, so she never has to disappear until the winter. She has a permanent home below the healing palace in the cave with her best friend, the snow dragon. In fact, her onsen bathhouse of healing has become so legendary that people from all over Japan who are suffering are willing to make the treacherous trek up to the top of the mountain just for the chance to be taken care of by her, and perhaps even catch a glimpse of her majestic snow dragon. And so, with my version of this myth, the ice spirit took the very thing that initially destroyed her, a steamy bath, and turned it into a place of healing for the sick and weary. My version of this wintry tale inspired the way I constructed this build, so you can see I've created the cave under the bathhouse, and I used the award trophy from Snowy Escape Pack and sized them up because they look like ice. I actually have a tutorial on how to place objects against foundations that you can check out if you want a more detailed look on how you can do it in your builds. I also love the debug and live edit objects that come with the Snowy Escape, especially the rock stone shrine pieces and arches, so I use them a lot in this build. Stay tuned to see me make the custom dragon, an ancient stone fireplace, and a ninja warrior weapons rack. Now, even though this build will later be put on the snowy mountain lot, I still wanted to use terrain paint to highlight and shade around the rocks to make them stand out in case you place this build on a different world, so that it looks nice when it's not covered in snow. For those of you who are new to my channel, I use a build mod by Twisted Mexi called T.O.O.L, and it lets you rotate objects, scale them, elevate them, and much more, beyond what the game normally allows. And the brilliant thing is that you don't have to have this mod installed for my builds or anyone else's built with T.O.O.L to work in your game. Now, those of you who are familiar with how I create custom objects with the T.O.O.L mod will know that I love to rotate objects into circles because it gives you an object in lots of different angles that you can use to create custom shapes. So as you see, I rotated a blue lobster from the debug menu because I wanted to create a blue mane of fur for my Japanese dragon. Originally, I wanted to try to construct an entirely different face without using the island living wall decoration pieces that I used to shape my first dragon, which you can see in the background. But after many attempts, I just couldn't get anything to look as good as my original face shape, so I ended up just duplicating it and moving it with the T.O.O.L mod, and then adjusted it slightly. At first, I was going to use the whiskers on the lobster as the whiskers for the dragon, but the claws ended up sticking out the mouth, so I later changed it. Also, I don't show here how I made the Japanese anime looking statue because I actually made her for a different build, but her hair is basically constructed using the debug wires from Journey to Bathhouse pack and the black plant buds from Strangerville. I added tiny lights as eyes to make her look more spirit-like. This dragon took hours and hours to make. I thought it would be faster because I have already made a dragon before, but I spent hours trying to find objects in a true blue color swatch, and it was harder than I thought. There are a lot of teal colored objects, but not a lot of baby blue colors. Anyway, after hours of rotating a bunch of objects, I settled on the lobster for the hair, a blue dinosaur kid's toy for the head, the island living wooded decoration pieces to shape the face, and these debug driftwood branches from Island Living that I use as antlers. Now, many of you are often baffled by what objects I use to create my custom objects, and some of you even treat it as a game to see if you can figure out what I used on Twitter, which is so fun for me to see you guess. But basically what I do is ignore what items in the game are supposed to be used as. Don't look at a chair as a chair, for example. Notice the colors and the shape and the patterns. Could any part of that object be useful? Then I problem solve how to hide the parts of the object that I don't like. I also use debug alien purple eyeballs, which help make the dragon look more realistic. I took time to tweak the shape of the face, and I love how the horns of the blue dinosaur toy tie in perfectly to the beige color of the wood, so at least it looks a bit different from the first dragon I made. Both of these dragons are available in my gallery as rooms, so you can use them in your own builds as well. I wanted this dragon to look a bit more ferocious, so I opened the mouth up a bit more, but I also wanted him to look like he's close and friendly with the ice spirit, so I made the face close and personal to her. For the teeth, I used these debug alien things from Get to Work pack. There's probably a better object I could have used because they are silver and the shape is a bit weird. Plus it has a black line running through the tip, but the build was already taking forever and I am a perfectionist who gets way too caught up in the details, so I wanted to try to save time wherever I could. Now, Japanese dragons look more snake-like with long tongues, so I knew I wanted to give him a long pink tongue, and I took time to try and find objects I could potentially use, and the best thing I could find is this debug base game rag that actually looks more purple, but I rotated it upside down and found that underneath was quite pink and perfect. So I sized them slightly smaller so the tongue starts off thicker and tapers down to a point, and then I took about an hour trying to rotate and shape the tongue to look as realistic as I could. Now, I've been using T.O.O.L mod for a few months now, so I've gotten the hang of how to twist objects on multiple angles, but it still takes me a while to figure out how to do it. So if you're new to using the mod, stick at it. It gets easier and becomes second nature to use it, like touch typing. After a lot of tweaking, I finally got the tongue to look how I wanted, and then it was on to the body, which was by far the hardest part. I tried out so many objects, but none of them worked. I needed something with more of a tube shape so that I could twist it into a snake body because all the objects I had previously used were a bit chunky. After a day of trying out tons of objects, I finally settled on the Journey to Batuu trash can. The color swatches didn't really match though because the blue was more of a teal, so I had you guys vote on Twitter between teal and beige won, so I later changed the color to beige. At least it matches the face, but it made it harder to try and blend the lobster blue mane into the body because there was nothing else in the game with the same kind of blue. Anyway, the hardest part of the body was twisting the body in a way that is super round and smooth. For those of you who have never tried turning objects on all three axes with the T.O.O.L mod, let me just say it is freaking hard, but I've been doing it more and more with my builds lately and I am getting better. Still have a long way to go though. The body looked too square and made the dragon kind of look like it had a broken neck, so I did a lot of adjusting off camera until the shape was smooth enough. I wasn't 100% happy with it, but I knew I'd be covering some of it with scales anyway, so I figured it was good enough. Like I said in a previous video, I'm learning to aim for 70 to 80% to save me from my annoying perfectionism. Unfortunately, I made the body of the dragon leading into the cave too high up, so I had to lower it and redo the shape a bit, but I'm so thankful for the toggle select feature of the T.O.O.L mod because it allows you to select a group of objects and move them all together at the same time. Then I knew I needed the body to be just a bit thicker than the neck so it didn't look like a snake with a massive dragon head. Unless I find a better object to use in the future, I don't think I'll be attempting another dragon like this again. It was so hard not to get the body to look all lumpy. Originally I had planned to do a twisty tail coming out the other end of the cave, but after the rigmarole of making the front of the body, I decided to pretend the rest of his body is just inside the cave. I couldn't handle another day of trying to make that twisty body. So I took a break from the dragon to jump back to the main building and placed it on the snowy mountain to get a better feel for how it would look. Now on the first level I wanted to create the main bathhouse and crafted some fancy entrances to the shower rooms. I love the debug wood Japanese archway so much, so I just spruced it up with some added details. And the rounded vent from Journey to Batuu is perfect for Japanese builds, so I add those everywhere throughout the build. I also love these debug jade coloured steam vent or sewer caps, but they can block a sim's path. I did playtest if the sims could take showers inside with them on the floor, and they seem to work fine for my sims at least. Then, out of sheer laziness, I didn't feel like building a bunch of bathrooms, so I used the debug bathroom stall and made it look like an intentional room inside. And they do work, so that saved me time. I can't remember what these wood wall decoration boxes are, but they are so perfect for adding some 3D detail. So I used those everywhere too, and my favourite swatch in the Snowy Escape Pack by far is this wood with a really dark grain running through it. It looks like aged wood, and I'm so glad it has more of an ash tone to it because I'm not a huge fan of yellowy or orange toned woods. And then I added these hanging herbs and flowers from Journey to Batuu because I thought that would be the perfect way ancient people might scent the place, because the steam would intensify the aroma, so I thought it could be like a healing thing, like using essential oils. Now, I love columns and spandrels and half walls and all the stuff we can do to add more architectural detail, but one of the biggest challenges when building something creative is doing it in a way that doesn't block your view when you're playing with your Sims. I think they need to improve how the camera works in the game because it bounces around like crazy if you do a build with more than one floor. And I noticed with this build that adding platforms also makes the camera bounce around even worse than before, so that kind of stinks. I really hope all these glitches get solved soon because it is making it harder and harder for me to build. It already takes me like 2 weeks to do a build. Anyway, here I am just trying to add more detail to the outer walls. I like to add thickness to walls, especially if they're meant to be made of something heavy like stone, because the walls in The Sims are paper thin and it can make a build feel more like a cardboard box. And since you can only place trims on exterior walls, I figured I'd try and make my own. Plus, it helps tie in all the colors together. Okay, so here's where I had to delete all the roofing because the platforms make the roof appear inside the room. The problem is that it left these gaps in the roof at the corners, and I tried using an angled roof piece, but it didn't look good. So after trial and error, I found that sized up snowy escape counter corners worked great to hide those roof gaps. Then I started working on the top floor that I decided to turn into a ninja training area. It probably doesn't go with the theme of this build, but I just wanted an excuse to build a Japanese weapons rack. We can just use the excuse that part of the healing process at the onsen bathhouse is physical therapy. Ninja therapy. I also really wanted to play around with platforms. Then I wanted to create some custom decorations, and I love using the books with runes on them from Realm of Magic, and the red and gold was just too perfect for a Japanese style, so, as I like to do, I used the back of the Get Famous bookcase in black and gold as a frame for the book symbol, and I thought these decorated corners I was creating could be like inspirational mantras for ninjas. I added the disheveled base game punching bags in brown leather because they have ninja stars stuck in the base, so that seemed fitting. And then I used the stage markings from Get Famous because I figured sword fighting and the other dramatic interactions would work perfectly in this setting. I was so pumped about making a weapons rack, so I used the red swatch of the debug Japanese art, used the black Realm of Magic books, and rotated one of the Snowy Escape paper umbrellas to look kind of like a gong. I also used the debug wishing wall because the crooked awning roof piece on top helps frame the rack. Then I used sized down bars from Realm of Magic in black and white because it looked very ancient Asian style to me, but I later changed it. I love using furniture as trims around objects to frame them because some of the furniture has such cool and ornate carved patterns in them. For the base of the archway columns, I sized up these debug bat traps from Jungle Adventure because the gold and ashy black colour matched the umbrella perfectly. And then I just added more detail to the corner wall decorations to make them feel more elaborate. I know many people don't like the Journey to Batuu game pack, but it is my favourite pack so far, and there are a handful of objects that are perfect for ancient and fantasy styled builds because of the aged metal look, so I pretty much use them in everything now. I took a break from the ninja training room to work on the kitchen, and the highlight for this floor is a custom ancient styled stone fireplace that I made. I discovered another problem with platforms whilst building this room, and that is the weird lighting glitch that happens when you build foundations and basements, and now unfortunately the same seems to be happening to platforms. So there were certain spots in the room where the fireplace was lit nicely and others where it has this weird black shadow running through it, and of course the location I wanted the fireplace to go is the area with the horrible shadow. But I didn't have the time or energy to reshape everything, so hopefully they fix that glitch and it won't look so dark. I just used the debug stone objects from Snowy Escape around the fireplace that comes with the pack. Debug stone base game pillars, debug gravestones to shape the interior, and the wood cabinets from Jungle Adventure because the tone of the wood matched perfectly with the mossy brown tint to the stone, and I needed an object that would tie it all together because the grey stone didn't blend as well into the brownish stone. I spent some time with ToolMod to tweak it all, and thankfully the green footprints of the objects do not block the path of your sim, so the fireplace is functional. I think I'm going to take more time to make some custom objects like this that I can use in several builds, because one of the things that makes building fantasy in The Sims 4 so time consuming is that all the functional furniture is modern looking, so I end up having to spend hours each build trying to make things look more ancient. So having a ready-made collection of usable furniture would make future building faster for all of us who like to build fantasy and ancient stuff. Because the game cabinets look too modern for this style, I used the wood wall boxes again as kitchen cabinets. I mention this all the time, but often you have to layer objects so close to each other that they flicker, especially when building against diagonal walls, so I do this trick with the tool mod where I select every other object and make it slightly bigger or smaller, so in this case I scaled them to 0.99 because the original size is 1. I decided to use the platforms to add extra depth to the back of the kitchen counters, so I made the platform the same height as the counters, and to hide the tiled surface of the counters I use these base game debug stone slabs. They are so awesome because unlike rugs they can be elevated and have a bit of thickness to them, and the footprint doesn't block your sim, so you can cover surfaces with them and your sim can still use it. As you can probably tell already, I spend hours with each build looking through the catalogue and collecting all the objects I think I could use for the build I'm working on. It's both a blessing and a curse for me because I'm so forgetful that I never remember what objects we have in the game, and I'm visual, so if I don't see an object right in front of me, I can't think of how I want to decorate the area. But the problem is that all the objects get in the way and the visual clutter can be claustrophobic, so it's the best method I have that works for me so far. I do also save objects that fit a theme like medieval into a room in my library, but often I don't have enough room on the lot to place the room, so I'm getting a bit better at remembering what objects we have in the game though. So I just pull from the objects I already had lying around to make it feel like the back area of the counters are like a little pantry. We definitely need more pantry items and kitchen clutter, like plates, utensils and cups. That would make building way faster too, but there are some great debug items you can use, like the ingredients bags from Eco Lifestyle and the base game flour sacks, and Snowy Escape does come with a stack of plates. It's pretty sad when you get excited about a pack having a stack of plates. But anyway, I didn't want to completely wall off the kitchen because an open floor plan is easier when viewing Sims, but with the room that large you would need load-bearing support columns running through the room, else the building would collapse, so I gave it more of an open feel. Then I added more clutter to the surfaces and then used the same stone slab and also a debug base game stone planter to hide the electronic part of the hot pot on the table. I then used a sized up debug bell from, I think, Vintage Glamour Stuff Pack as a sort of dinner bell or gong, and just placed it on a sized down wood arch with the hammered metal wing decoration from Journey to Batuu. Now, to hide the corners of the roof from the gap on the second floor, I couldn't use the kitchen cabinets like I did before because the room shape was different, and so at this point I was running out of time to finish, so I just used oversized awnings to shape the top of the roof. It's not a perfect solution, but it's good enough. I did a bit of resizing to remove flickering, and then I jumped over to the final floor I needed to work on, which is actually the second floor. I'm only focusing here on building a wishing wall in this floor because this video is already longer than I wanted it to be, but basically this floor is a rest and relaxation floor, and I included some beds, a massage table, a painting area, a fireplace, and book corner, and then this wishing wall in the center as a sort of ancient way of journaling. All the patients can share their hopes, dreams, and encouragements with each other, kind of like an empowering notice board. Anyway, when I playtested it, it didn't work, and I realized it's because I put two wishing walls back to back and you can only have one, so I ended up removing the other side and shifting the objects a bit, but it mostly remained the same. And I was almost done. The end was in sight. I just needed to put finishing touches on the top ninja floor and finish the weapons rack. I also added sized up kitchen knives on the outer wall to act as added weapons. And I made these hanging ball and chain weapons with the rain chains from Snowy Escape, a ball of black wool from Nifty Knitting, and some debug push pins sized up as the spikes. I was going to make the spikes go all the way around in all directions, but I was too tired and I figured it looked cool enough as it was. I sized down some base game cabinet tables as the trim because I preferred the black and gold details rather than the white and black of the bars. I made fighting sticks and swords out of sized up wands from Realm of Magic, so I just used tool mod to rotate them and size them to fit against the weapons rack. For the actual rack on which the swords would be displayed, I tried out a lot of objects and I couldn't figure out what to use, so I finally settled on the modern looking lights from Snowy Escape in the black swatch because the angle was perfect for resting a sword on top, so I just stacked the lights on top of each other and turned the lights off in live mode. Then I used a debug iron fence post from Vampires. I used a rotated machete from Jungle Adventure to add a variety to the sword collection, and used tool mod to lower the wand swords on top of the rack notches. Then I added some wall swords and set up a couple tables with the medieval styled swords from Get Famous. and there were just a couple of finishing touches remaining, and one of them was to fill in the gap I noticed on the fireplace between the stone columns and the wall. It just looked a bit tacky, so I used these debug stone objects from Snowy Escape and adjusted them with the tool mod to make it look like the fireplace is carved out of the stone that attaches to the wall. Now, a huge amount of gameplay relies on computers, and since we have no ancient objects to function as computers in the game, I just quickly used these rotated brown Realm of Magic books to hide most of the laptop and still allow the screen to poke through. That way, it doesn't break the illusion of the ancient feel of this build too much. I then had an idea that it would be cool to use the dartboard from Get Together as a ninja star throwing area as part of the ninja training. So, to hide the dartboard, I used these posters of samurai faces as a sort of target practice dummy and made a custom hanging post as a base for it. Then I tidied up the entrance, added some hanging lanterns, and I was done with the build. But not with the dragon. So I jumped back over to finish the dragon. I should have made the construction of the dragon a separate video so that this video is not as long, but to be honest, I've been really ill the past couple weeks and I had a couple of doctor's appointments that wiped me out, so I'm too tired to separate the footage, so I apologise. I doubt many of you have managed to get this far into the video, but if you have, thanks for sticking with me. We are almost done. To create the legs, I just copied the base of the legs and claws from my previous dragon, but I did have to change it a bit because I needed them to be in a crouching position. Creating a believable arm shape was hard, especially the elbow area, and the shape I ended up with is not entirely great, but I knew the cave would end up hiding the elbows, so I wasn't too worried about it, and I'm proud of myself for restraining the urge to make it look perfect, even though you can't see it. I'm getting better, slowly but surely. Now, I couldn't find gems in the same blue as the lobster mane, but these were the most true blue toned ones I could find, so I started stacking them to cover the top of the body. I knew it was going to be several hours of shaping gems around the twisty neck ahead of me, but thankfully I had already rotated these gems into wheels previously, so that saved a bit of time. Also, to try and save even more time, I shaped a single row over the spine of the dragon to the head, then I duplicated that row with tool and rotated them on an angle to the left and then to the right, because that way I would only need to adjust some of the scales rather than rotate each gem in a million different directions. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but it would have taken a whole day, and at least this only took me 3 hours, in addition to the 5 other hours it took to do the rest. Again, I don't think I will be attempting another dragon like this for a while. I also wish you could change the swatches of the gems, because then I could make a few variations of this dragon, and all I would have to change is the mane. But if I wanted this dragon in a different color, I'd have to spend hours rotating a different color gem all over the body again, and I am not doing that. No way. Doing it once was enough for me. The last thing I needed to do was create long whiskers, and I figured I'd use sized down driftwood since it matched the antlers and it was long and skinny enough to create a whiskery shape. Like the tongue, I made each piece a tiny bit smaller than the previous one and rotated them to curve down. At first, the curve looked weird, but after an hour of shaping it, I finally got a flowing whisker look that I liked. The problem now was creating a mirror image of it. I kid you not, I spent over an hour trying to figure out how to duplicate the one I already made and use tool mod to just flip it the other way, but everything I tried did not work, so eventually I had to just individually rotate each piece again. I should have just done that to begin with, but I got there in the end. I was planning on using the lobsters down the parts of the spine to blend the mane into the body and to balance out the darker blue of the lobster, but I was so exhausted and this build was due the next day, so I just used bluish white crystals on the body and face to try and cover some of the weird parts of the lobster that stick out on the chin area of the dragon. The only thing left was to make it fit the entrance of the cave, and it looked better to pull it forward a couple tiles than it was before, so I just quickly duplicated the body twice and stacked them next to each other to lengthen it. Then I placed it on my final build, and then I realised that the snow covered most of the dragon anyway, but that's okay, because if you place it on a non-snowy lot, you'll be able to see the colours. Finally, my build was done, so here's some footage of Sims using the Ice Spirit Onsen Palace. I love the steam and watercolour of these baths. They look so much better than the way the water looks in the pools and fountains in build mode. I also kept the lighting a bit darker because ancient buildings would be way more dimly lit. The thing I love about these debug wood gazebos from the Snowy Escape pack is that you can use them as bed frames and they won't block your sim from using the beds. Because the lot is a public bathhouse, I had a bunch of random sims showing up on the lot as I playtested it wearing modern looking clothes, which kind of ruins the ancient illusion, but oh well. I thought a little rock and sand garden would work well as a relaxing area for Sims to paint. Plus you can't interact with it, so I needed an activity for the area. And here's the modified encouragement wishing wall that your Sims can use, and it will impact their mood. For the fireplace in this area, I just didn't have the oomph to build another custom one, and the other one was way too big for the bookcases to fit, so unfortunately it looks a bit modern in this area, but too bad, it is what it is. Thankfully everything in the kitchen works perfectly, and you can size down things like the cauldron and stone trash can, and they will still work. I kept the rest of the furniture on this floor simple, with the excuse that Japanese style is supposed to be more minimalist anyway, right? Now, time to test out my favourite floor and act like a ninja. So, of course, I had to dress up one of the Sims in a ninja costume. I mean, the digital scoreboard still shows through, but we'll just say it's magic. And now time for an epic duel! Unfortunately, because each platform level counts as a room, you can only have the outer walls all the way up or all the way down, so it looks a bit weird without the back wall. I will also make the stone fireplace and this ninja weapons rack available as separate rooms you can use in your builds, but I will have to adjust them because of all the platforms I used here. And there you have it, an epic onsen bathhouse palace to match an epic legendary tale of the ice spirit who found companionship with a beautiful snow dragon and their adventures as they both save creatures and humans trapped in the hostile conditions of the frigid Japanese winters. Sorry the video was longer than usual, but I hope this build inspires lots of ideas for your own builds. I'll put the download link for this build in the description below. Be sure to check out the other incredible builders who are part of this collaboration. A huge thank you to KamilaYtb for inviting me to join in the fun. If you like this video, be sure to give it an encouraging thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and hit the bell to be notified about fresh content. I love you guys so freaking much. Thanks for being awesome.